Hi everyone, a very good afternoon to you all. Welcome to another session by Digital Vidya on the power of engagement marketing. Today we have Amit Doshi. He heads consumer marketing and digital at Lenovo India. He will lead the session and will cover topics such as crowdsourcing, real-time content, and use of influencers in social media campaigns. He will cover all these through concepts and case studies across categories at Lenovo India. So I'll just hand over the session to Amit. Before that, for the people who are joining in for the first time, you can just put out all your questions in the questions tab, which is on the right hand side below, and we'll read out all your questions once we are done with the presentation. So you can just type in your questions. We'll go through all your questions once after 30-40 minutes of the presentation. Thank you. Over to you, Amit.
Okay, thanks, Divya. And it's great to be here with Digital Vidya and everyone who's associated with it. Also, thank you to the Digital Vidya team for making this happen and all the arrangements that have gone behind it. Okay, so let me get started. This is how we're going to run the next 60 minutes or so. We'll just spend about 5 minutes. I'll try and get through my introduction as quickly as I can, and then what I've got for you guys is a bunch of case studies. Now, these are live case studies that we've seen at Lenovo India over the last 2 years or so. And then, I've got like a quick exercise for you guys, just for you guys to look at what we've got and and just think for yourself, think for your businesses, think for your areas of work, and really see how you'd like to make any of this possible for your businesses and for your brands if it makes sense to you. All right, and then I'll leave about 10 minutes or so for Q&A towards the end, and hopefully hand back 5 minutes over to you guys. Okay. So just a quick intro from my side. I currently lead consumer marketing, both offline and online at Lenovo India. In total, I've got about 14 years of work experience. The company that I worked for, a large part of my early career was spent in the FMCG industry before I made a decision to move to consumer tech. Started my career with Buffetti Van Mel that makes confectionery. You may have heard of brands like Alpenliebe, Mentos, and Center Fresh. Then I spent close to a decade at Britannia before I moved to Lenovo, and it's my fourth year at Lenovo right now. By education, I've done a management degree at just one second. By education, I've done my management degree at from Narsi Monji in Mumbai, and prior to that, I did my computer science graduation. I grew up in Jamshedpur, which is in the eastern part of India, in the state of Jharkhand. What do I love? I love consumer tech. I'm really passionate about it. Anything to do with web, I'm on it, trying to figure out what's happening, and then it really keeps it interesting. Currently, I'm hooked on to Netflix in a big way and really discovering a whole host of audio entertainment that's out there on the web. So that's it. Let's get started. So yeah, this is really in a nutshell the story of Lenovo. 3.5, 4 years back, we were a fairly traditional brand, and that's when we really started seeing this inflection happening as far as social media and digital were concerned, and obviously consumer technology was getting deeply impacted by the changes in the ecosystem. And we said, hey, how are we going to change a few things around here and make sure that we're in we're in sync with the audience. And basically what we did was we really figured out three pillars that were key to what we're doing, right? One was crowdsourcing, right? How can we really involve our audiences in what we're doing rather than just sending content out to them, which is really not the value that you can get out of social media. Social media is a two-way conversation, and it can really help you do a conversation with your audience dramatically differently from the way you do on mainline media. Then we said, hey, there's this bunch of influencers that are out there who are really making a mark for themselves on social media. They come from diverse fields. And we also realized when we spoke to our young consumers, the 15 to 20-year-olds, that, the notion of who a youth icon is, a celebrity is, a brand ambassador is changing for them. They seek their inspiration from a variety of people who they follow on social media. And depending on what their passions are, they've got several heroes, they've got several icons, and said, we've got to find a way of really involving them in this journey. The third piece was really about user-generated content. It's one thing to involve audiences in doing your marketing campaigns. It's yet another to actually use them in creating content that you can then go and propagate or that really works for you. So let me just pick each one of these and share with you a couple of cases that exemplify these in possibly the best manner possible as we've seen at Lenovo India. Let me start with crowdsourcing. This is a great example an example that I love sharing. And this campaign is more to do with the brand and less to do with a particular product or a particular launch. Now, Lenovo, by the brand that we are, we stand for doers. We stand for people who are determined, who are gritty, people who never stand still. That's our internal attitude. We are a brand that keeps moving, and it's we ones who love to push boundaries all the time. And this was in early 2014 when the FIFA World Cup was happening. And we were really trying to figure out, hey, how could we have participated in the World Cup, or really participate in conversations around the World Cup. And what we realized was, while everyone in India was going gaga over a Brazil or over an Argentina, we came across this amazing story of young girls from a village in Jharkhand. The village's name is Hutuk for people who are interested, who had actually from nowhere formed a football team under the leadership of an American, interestingly, called Franz Gassler. And this organization really teaches young girls and adolescent women in this village football, and they use sports as a mean to empower girls. And this team had actually gone on and won a couple of international tournaments. And this was the second year of our association. We said, hey, rather than focusing on a global team, why don't we do something which is inspirational for audiences in India? So, that's how our association with YUWA started. However, this was year 2 of our association with YUWA. And so, like I said, these are the YUWA girls. It's an NGO that uses football and education in a rural village to drive empowerment. And we said, okay, so what do you want to do? And what this organization really wanted was more youngsters joining them and really helping them get closer to their journey. And they were not just looking for money; they were looking for people who could share their expertise, who could do volunteering hours, who could just bring their sheer energy and enthusiasm to the place. And what we did was we actually asked, we went to our audience all across and we said, okay, tell us, these are the girls from YUWA, how can you really help them with what you know? And if you do, if your idea is great, we'll let you do an internship with YUWA, go down to Ranchi, all expenses paid, and really bring your idea to life. And very interestingly, what we did was we actually got the girls to judge these ideas and said, okay, these are so many pitches from all across the country. Tell us, which ones are relevant for you, which ones are ideas that are really going to help you improve your lives. And we got about 1,300 plus applications across the country in a really short period of time to intern with YUWA. We engaged young minds across to solve real world problems using their abilities. And then, of course, we picked up three young people who had these ideas that the girls loved. And this was a really, really interesting experience for us to actually uh, connect youth from all across the country with a cause which was in one remote part of the world, using social media and using the power of digital. And what was in it for Lenovo? Lenovo wanted to really stand as a brand which is for people who never stand still, right? And at the end of the program, we did a research which showed that we got a 19% lift as a result of the program. And this is a common theme you'll see across. There's a lot of interesting stuff, but we always make sure that there's some measurement towards the end to assess ROI of all that we're doing. This is a case which is, in a completely different vein. We were launching this smartphone called VibeX2. This, I remember, was, late 2014. And the phone was unique in its design. The phone was unique because it had a layered design. So, and people who may have interacted with the phone can relate to the uniqueness of the product. And what we really built up to was, it's the world's first layered design phone, and the agency really was asked to say, okay, if what can you do about it? How can you create excitement and buzz leading up to a launch? And for my friends who understand technology industry, consumer tech industry, every phone launch is like a movie launch. You've got to really build up to it, and then there's this big bang opening. And that's really important for a new product, given the concentration in the market and launches that are happening pretty much every week. So the insight really was that life becomes interesting when you add a layer to it. And there was a youth insight. The generation today is completely at comfort living a layered life. They're not unidimensional in any way. They have many sides to them, and they want to do every side equal justice, right? And like I said, the goal was obviously to create a lot of buzz. And the solution was actually the first of its kind real-time engagement. It was almost like a 72-hour artathon using influencers on Twitter and Facebook. And what we really did was very simple. We said, look, just give us a photograph of yours on Twitter or Facebook or wherever, and tell us what do you want to add to it. Tell us which layer do you want us to add to it. For example, if you see the first picture with that guy whose tongue's wagging out, he wrote back to us saying, hey, vibe up my life with a layer of crazy. Now, this is not the actual photograph that he gave. He gave a photograph of his and said, hey, vibe up my life with a layer of crazy. And our artists in real time turned around content and sent it back to him. Let me share a couple of other examples. So, this is how and let me just do the flow and then a couple of examples. So, we launched this website. We asked our people, hey, just send us your photograph and tell us which layer do you want us to add. And we actually had about 2,300 odd people who sent a challenge from their website, several hundreds from social media. And we actually grouped together like an army of artists who worked 72 hours on the clock, non-stop, taking these entries and turning these pictures into something really, really interesting. And you've got to note that this is much ahead of its time in the sense that this is, there were no Snapchat filters at that point in time. There were no other photography apps where you could do fun stuff like that, right? So, you could see the original pictures there, and on the right-hand side, you see, so for example, you see the third picture, you've got this guy, and he said, hey, add some bit of nature to me, and this is what the artist turned back, and we sent this back. And all of this led up to the event which launched the product, but we got amazing buzz even before the product was launched. These are some examples of photographs, and each one of these content pieces had amazing reach. It had, huge organic reach. There was a lot of shareability. People were talking about it, and this whole chatter really helped the phone launch. And this is, snapshot from our Snapchat activity. This is very interesting. Gone are the days when you create something and you put out something. This was a case where we not only showed what we were doing with what consumers were sending, but on Snapchat we were actually showing people what's happening behind the scenes, what's happening in our agency offices. How are we having fun doing this whole piece? Yeah, this is actually the agency office that worked 72 hours straight to create real-time content. Let me move to a few examples which are around influencer relationships, and we use our relationships with a lot of influencers in really interesting ways. Now, I mean, there can't be a bigger influencer than your brand ambassador himself. And Ranbir is a very, Ranbir was with the brand for a long period of time, about 4 years. And this is the time when we wanted to first launch our phones on e-com. And for people who, again, follow the industry, you'd know that Lenovo's had some really, really good success on e-commerce. And that's helped us really to grow up to today the #2 smartphone brand in the country. Now, this was an interesting one. In this case, we had to work with Ranbir and figure out how could we use, our association with him, interestingly, on social media. The challenge being, however, that Ranbir really doesn't have a social media presence. So what we said was that, look, Ranbir is going to be coming on social media. We sent that out as leaks, and the world went completely crazy. Everyone started anticipating Ranbir's entry on social media. In fact, the campaign trended globally on Twitter for 48 hours before the campaign day. And on the day of the campaign, we said, look, Ranbir is going to be around for 8 hours on 6 social media channels, right? And it was a day of complete fun. Part of it was scripted, but almost 80% of it was happening real time. Ranbir was having fun on social media, interacting with his fans. And we got unprecedented buzz, and it's only towards the afternoon of that day that consumers really started to figure that this is actually for a Lenovo product. And very interestingly, this is the first time possibly it's ever happened on the world. A youth icon like him came onto social media just for 8 hours. At the end of the 8 hours, everything was done and dusted, and there was no presence. So it was a unique campaign. Broke the internet, I would say, created unprecedented buzz for us, just 8 hours. And what it did was gave us an amazing start on Flipkart, and from there, as they say, rest is history. Then we move to another case where we used influencers of a different nature. This was for the yoga tablet launch, and what we were really for people who on the webinar who know what yoga products are. Yogas are a brand of multi-mode products. So you can twist and turn the product. You can, it's got 360-degree flexibility. You can use a laptop or a tablet in far many more number of ways than you're used to. And what we really wanted to do is educate our consumers what these 4 types of modes are, and how can you use a yoga device differently. And for this, what we did was we hired an agency that then helped us associate ourselves with these 4 influencers. So people here, there's Mihir Fadnavis, who's actually a film critic. We've got a chef there. Ashwin is an actor you may have seen. Then there's Ankit Vengulekar. Ankit's, like a gadget guru of sorts. And, we had all of these guys who really worked with us to spread the buzz and really drive the message that we wanted to drive. Now, all of these cases are in the public domain. If you're interested, you can just go Google them, and you should be able to get a fairly detailed write-up on what we did in each of these, right? And the way this panned out was we again launched a website. which showed these four Twitter personalities actually boxed and trapped and pained by ordinary tablets. And and what they did was they went out on their social handles, on their Twitter handles, and asked audiences to come and help them and get them out of the box, to untrap them, so as to say, to really, to free them up. And conversations picked up across the board. And it was only towards the day of the launch that they all got themselves freed up. And if this was an interactive game, so consumers could actually come here and interact with these guys, and if they entered the right answer, they would get, they could free themselves up. These influencers would get freed up. But the right answer to free them up, or the password, so as to say, to free them up, was a feature related to yoga. And then in that way, what we did was we educated the audiences exactly the way we wanted, but they had a lot of fun along the way. And when you have fun, you're engaged, you get the message much better, and you're most likely to share it as well with your friends. This is another interesting one. This one is a completely different example. Now, here we're not working with influencers or from different walks of life or a celebrity. Here we're actually working with someone like Nimish. Nimish Dubey is one of the most reputed tech bloggers in the country, and we said, look, we believe in our product, ThinkPad. Why don't you, and ThinkPad stands for world-class engineering, world-class reliability and durability. And we said, just use the ThinkPad and do whatever you want to do with it, right? I mean, no scripts, nothing, just put it to the torture test that you can. And Nimish had a lot of fun with it. There was a drop test, there was a water spill test, there was a freeze test, no control. We just had confidence in the product. And Nimish really sent all of this content out. And when someone like him, who's a neutral person, tests our product and sends stuff out, the influence of that content is absolutely multiplicative in that sense. This is an example of how you could turn consumers into influencers. Now, we've got a lineup of gaming range, and we said, okay, look, who do gamers listen to? Gamers listen to gamers. So, we reached out to the top gamers in the country who got the best ranking for these individual games, and we said, hey, why don't you just tell your fans, tell people who follow you, your hacks and cheats and tips and tricks about the game. And Lenovo Y series, which is a gaming range, will actually help you create this content. So it was content created by gamers for the gamers, and there was obviously branding for Lenovo, and there was product placement and so on. And this was again received really, really well by audiences, because we were not trying to thrust our product onto them, but really creating content that that gamers would love. And obviously there was a manner in which we embedded our brand and product message. So just taking a look at what we've been through so far in the presentation, I'm just watching out for time. We've probably got another 5-10 minutes for my presentation. We've looked at how could you do crowdsourcing. We looked at a few cases of how you could actually build relationships with influencers and really involve them in the process of building your brand. Now let's look at some cases of content that's purely user generated and stuff that you can then go ahead and use for your brand. This is for another product of ours. It was called the K3Note smartphone. Incidentally, it was in 2015. It was the highest-selling phone, and K3Note was a really, really powerful device, and that really set a new standard of performance in the Indian market. And what we really did was we said, okay, look, the KillerNote is coming, but tell us, before that phone arrives, tell us what would you do. If you had to give up your phone for the K3Note, put your phone to rest and write a message for your smartphone. Again, this is disruptive stuff. We had 5,000 odd consumers who actually lay their phone to rest at this virtual burial ground of sorts. and they actually wrote their epitaph, their last messages for their phones. And the prize for the people who were to put out the best messages for along with these graves where they were laying their old phones down to rest to, was to get priority passes to buy products on Flipkart when it was going to get launched. The picture that you see at the bottom right is another interesting example. Now, three people there. So there's Geeky Ranjit, there is Ranveer Kapoor, and there's Ashwin, who runs a very successful blog called C4 Tech. And you've got two tech influencers and one brand ambassador, one key brand influencer, actually working together to do a first of its kind in unboxing video. Very unique, funny, humorous, quirky. It got 50,000 organic views in 3 days. And what we had was unprecedented results. KillerNote as a hashtag tagged trended across. It dominated Google search on announcement day. Close to 500,000 people registered for the sale on the first sale day, which was on 8 July 2015. This is my last chart, so to say, from the presentation. This is not from Lenovo, but from my earlier organization at Britannia. I used to handle the health category. NutriChoice was one of the brands in the category, and what we realized was that health is something that you can't prescribe to people. People have got to be inspired and motivated to adopt healthier alternatives and healthier lifestyle choices. And what we really did was we actually leveraged early adopters of NutriChoice, people who were health early adopters who had started buying into NutriChoice, to actually spread the good word for us. When it was launched, we actually we christened it as India's first social network for health, right? And then we gradually integrated the NutriChoice brand into it. You can go to ihealthyou.com even today. It's a unique destination which just doesn't give you health nuggets, but you can actually interact and meet with other health aficionados, right? I mean, it's very common to have communities today, but I'd like to appreciate the fact that we are talking about the year 2009, 2010, when a lot of it was still nascent. So just to sum up, what is engagement marketing? Engagement marketing is really two-way marketing, which is not just putting your content out on social media, but really involving your audiences and making them feel engaged with the brand and with the campaign. And these are the levers that are core to us. There may be other levers as well, but I'd strongly urge you to consider these. One is crowdsourcing. The second is who are your true influencers? How can you involve them in the journey? And the third is doing true user-generated content and using that to build advocacy for your brand. Let me before we get into the exercise, what's really critical is while you're doing all of it, it's important that you stay authentic. Consumers are smart. They know who the brand is, what your personality has been all these years and months and decades in some cases. So just be authentic. Don't try and be who you're not. Just be yourself as a brand. Be courageous to cede control. I mean, you can make out, right? I mean, you're giving control to influencers. You're giving control to your audience. You're using audience content. You can't control everything and everyone. You've just got to be courageous and the trust to give your brand's control away to audiences who love you and who care for you and who are serious about your relationship with them. The third is about taking risks. In each of these cases that you saw, there was, again, some of them broke new ground. There was no precedent really for work like that, and it's important to take risks all the time. The other thing we've learned along the way is influencer relationships cannot be short-term, right? I mean, you've seen a lot of cases where you've got one influencer today who's with a brand and then they're with another brand on another day. We've also learned it the hard way, but we've realized that there's no point in investing time and effort and your relationship with influencers when they genuinely don't have affinity for your brand. But when you have a relationship that's a high quality relationship, do invest in nurturing it. It's like any other human relationship. And the final one would be, have a bias for innovation. Set aside 20% of your money, set aside 20% of your time, set aside 20% of your agency's effort to try stuff that's different, to challenge status quo within and see where you really go with it, right? So that's really uh, our journey with engagement marketing in a nutshell. We've come to see it as a really powerful tool to engage and connect with our audiences, and I hope you found it useful too. So that brings me uh, to the exercise that we were talking about at the beginning of the webinar. Now, what I really want you to, I mean, there are no right or wrong answers, or there are no correct answers or immediate answers even that you may have. But if you were to just take aside 5 minutes right now and write down for yourselves responses to these following questions. Let me read them out. Who are key influencers in your business? And more importantly, who are key influencers in your business that you can work with? Who do you think will come along with you? Secondly, are you confident of your customer or consumer relationships? And if you're confident that they can, you can involve them along the way, can you write one or two ideas in which they can be involved with you, or they can actually create for you? The third is more about an internal strength. From an internal strength standpoint, what changes will you need to make in your capabilities or in your team or your agency structure to make something like this happen? It's not something that is mainstream. It's new. It's change is always uncomfortable. What would you need to change? Would it be processes? Do you need to get new people? Does your system or culture of working need to change? Fourthly, do you or your team have the skills and capabilities to get onto this journey, right? If not, which are the critical skills that you need development on? How would you want to go about it? And finally, this is where really the rubber hits the road. What percentage of your budget are you open to set aside for engagement marketing? And if you're influenced by some of the stories that I shared, and if you think it applies to your business, and if you see value in doing what we spoke about, what we're speaking about right now, just keep aside a certain percentage and say, hey, I'll try an experiment and see where it takes me, right? So with that, let me just give you a few minutes to think it through and pen down your thoughts, and then we can get on to question and answers.
Thank you so much, Amit. So everyone, you can just type in your questions and think about the exercise in the chat panel. We'll take up all your questions one by one. Also, along with this, I'm launching a poll for the people who are interested in digital marketing course by Digital Vidya. You can just select in yes, no, or if you're already a participant, just say you're a participant. We'll only approach people who are really interested in digital marketing course. And if you have some queries regarding how digital marketing can help you in your business or personal growth, you can just fill out your details in the link and attend tomorrow's session, which will be led by Pradeep Chopra, the co-founder of Digital Vidya. And he'll answer all your queries regarding the effect of digital marketing on your business or personal growth. So I'll just check out if we have any questions till now. If we do. So one question is from Kiran, that I have a financial product to promote. Can you suggest him some other digital media apart from Facebook and Twitter for promoting his business?
Right. Okay. Yeah, I mean, today you've got really several avenues that are out there. Yeah, and you've got to really first think through what is it that you really want to do. If your key objective is to, let's say, build awareness, you've got to go after channels that have that reach and awareness. And obviously, Facebook today has reach, YouTube has reach. If you're, on the other hand, if your audience segment is narrow and you don't, reach is not such a concern, you can try out different methods as well. But in the financial services industry or financial products industry, one of the things that I've always found very useful is content. Uh, I would uh, I would seriously recommend for you to look at content, and you've got several avenues through which you can promote content today. You can obviously start with the absolute basic of running a blog, getting some experts on board, and then making sure people come to the blog and get to know more about your product. But today, content can reach out in many native forms using several different channels that you have. So I don't know if you've considered using content marketing networks, right? I mean, there are several out there. For example, there's Outbrain and so on and so forth. Even key publishers like Times of India, Economic Times, all of these guys now again have a lot of native products which reside within the app, within the website, but is written in an advertorial style where there's real value for consumer education. And then, of course, there is implicit branding and an opportunity for you to communicate how your product can help solve a problem or make someone's life better. So, if you're selling an insurance product, can you talk about, the benefits of insurance? Can you talk about, how to choose the right insurance policy or mythbusters or, what should you watch out for when you are buying an insurance product? And then really use some of these content marketing networks or publisher tie-ups to really get your word out.
Thank you so much. Moving to next question, which is by Suraj. He is asking, I need to figure out as how do we score out if what brand or product or services can be promoted or cannot be promoted by digital marketing. Is there anything or everything can be promoted, or what parameters should we consider while deciding these?
Hmm. Hey, hi Suraj. Great question. Actually, it's a really challenging one. But I would like to actually for you to consider just take two steps back. Fundamentally, any media choice is about uh, figuring out two things: figuring out where your consumer is, right? And secondly, is that medium the most cost-effective way to reach that consumer, right? Now, if you're, for example, in a market where a lot of time is shifting on of consumers is shifting on to digital media, and if for you, if by testing and learning, if you've realized it's the most cost-effective way, by all means. But that's not the answer to everything. I'm sure there are. So, for example, if if you were, let's say, I'm just taking very diverse example. If you were, let's say, a photographer or a party decorator in let's say a residential complex or in a certain locality, right? You could realize that putting a poster on the dashboard of the buildings or the notice board of the building is the most cost-effective way to reach your audience, right? So I think it's first about really figuring out who your audience is, what do you really want to communicate, and what's the most cost-effective way of reaching these audiences. Uh, I can't think of really anything that you cannot promote on digital because in the metro markets, in the urban part of India, there's so much adoption that is moving to digital. But yes, I'm sure there are a lot of marketing requirements that you can meet without reaching digital. I mean, if you want to demonstrate a product, for example, right? You can showcase it on digital, but if you want people to touch and feel. For example, the food industry that I worked in prior to this, I could tell people, hey, we've launched this new pack of cookies which has almonds in it and cranberries and raisins, etc. And people know about it. But if people want to try it, I can show them how the cookie looks on digital, but I can't today. I can't get them to take a bite of it, and hence I would have to do something in a supermarket or a mall where there's sampling that I'll need to do, right? So yes, I mean there are avenues where you can't replace other forms of marketing.
Thank you. Hope this answers Suraj. Moving to next question, it's by Brijesh. He's asking, how can you get good influencers and how to figure out who exactly is a good influencer in your industry?
Hi, that's a great question, and that's a really tough one. That's a really tough one. I think the process really has to, like I said earlier, it's all about making sure that you really understand your product category and you really figure out, first of all, for that product category or for the audience that is interested in that product category, who do they follow? That's a simpler thing to do. You could go onto social media, you could just crawl the web, you'll figure out, that's fine. But I think what's more important is, first of all, does the influencer really have a key role to play in shaping the opinion that you want to shape? And that's your internal judgment. But I think the thing that you should care about most is, does the influencer that you're interested in, does he or she really care about your brand, or is it just a commercial engagement for them, right? In some cases, yes, commercial engagements can help, but in most cases, you'd realize that unless and until there's, you don't have natural synergy between the influencer and between your brand, if they really don't care about your brand, it's going to go only so much, because either they're not going to be interested over a period of time, or and they might switch to other brands, or the audience will see through it. They'll see through the fact that, hey, this person seems interested in this brand because it was a commercial transaction and not really an authentic, genuine influencer. So I think that's something that you've got to be the custodian of, and make sure that you really find people who deeply care about your brand. And the best examples of influencers are influencers who actually use your brand, right? They own your product or they consume your brand. That's an absolute hit out of the park if you get someone who's influential and likes your brand, loves your brand.
Thank you so much. That was a great answer, Ramit. Moving to next question, it's by Parul. She is asking, how do you define effectiveness of a campaign, especially when they last for like 48 to 72 hours?
Yeah, that's a tough one, right, Parul? I mean, it's a lot of intense work that goes in for 3 or 4 days, and your agencies are going to put a whole lot behind that. I think it's very critical in such cases that you make your KPIs very clear before you begin the campaign. I mean, are you doing this to drive visits to a page, or are you doing this to just get buzz? You don't care about how many people came to the website, but in terms of chatter, you want a certain level of impressions, you want a certain share of voice in that category. Or are you doing it for commerce? I mean, are you doing it because you want a certain number of purchases happening on your website, or are you trying to do something that's going to drive people to physical store, for example, that you own? I think it's for the brand leader to really define what is that activity for. And as you saw in one of those activities, for example, the VibeX2 activity, our whole goal was to drive conversation. In another activity like K3's launch, it was about driving registrations for sale at Flipkart, right? Yeah, so you've got to be very clear what those 3 or 4 days are going to do for you and what they're not going to do for you, right? I think that agencies, you owe that clarity to agencies if you're on the client side. And if you're on the agency side, I think it's equally important for you to clarify your stance and have it in, have expectations, cast very clearly, so that, both teams are working towards the same goal.
Thank you very much. Moving to next question, it's by Akash. He's asking, how does one convinces a small or medium business about the importance of engagement marketing? For example, a restaurant.
Hmm. Yeah, I think, like I said, two things, right? I'm a believer in two things. One, I'm a believer in taking a few risks, and second, I'm a believer in test marketing, right? It doesn't. The good thing is that engagement marketing doesn't have to be a very expensive affair, right? So, you can work with your team members, your colleagues, your manager, whoever is the person who you have to enroll, and say, hey, look, this is something that I want to do. I think it's, going to work. Your conviction obviously needs to come through. And then you've got to set very clear expectations on what it will do and it will not do. And I think you've also got to approach it from an open mind and say, okay, if this works, we will, I'm investing a small sum of money. If it works, we'll scale it up further, right? If it doesn't work, look, we'll, learn from it and we'll try and build it into what we're doing next. I think that's important. That you've got to have the test and experiment measurement mindset, right? I don't think it's just about, mistake people make is they test, they experiment, but they never set very clear metrics or KPIs before they start testing. So what happens is at the end of it, you really don't know whether you've done well or you haven't done well, right? So that's the best advice I'd give you.
Thanks, Amit. Thanks for the advice. Moving to next question, it's by Prince. He's asking, what are your views on digital channels that could be effective for a B2B business, especially a business which is into rent-a-car brand targeting, rent-a-car brand which is targeting corporates for their commercial segments.
Right, right. Yeah, I don't know your business at all, but I'll hazard a guess. I think it's going to be important for your business to be to demonstrate your value to, let's say, people who are in procurement in these organizations, because they're finally doing agreements on which employee services to use and so on and so forth. So let me make that assumption that it's the HR and the procurement guys you're talking to, right? So if you're doing, let's say, upper funnel stuff, by that I mean if you just want to build awareness of your product and of your service, we found, we use a lot of LinkedIn and we use direct email. That's always effective. Get a quality database, a database where people have given you permission to reach out to them, and you could send emailers. That's one way. Second, LinkedIn, I urge you to consider LinkedIn. They've got now a very, very strong suite of advertising products where you can actually not only, pick up, who's what designation, where they are, and so on and so forth, but the advanced versions of the LinkedIn product also help you understand the organization structure. Who is it that you're reaching out to? How do they fit into the organization's hierarchy? Are they senior in the organization? Are they a decision maker? Who do they report to perhaps? And you get a whole lot of insight, right? And you could go down there, right? And really have very clear metrics on how many face-to-face meetings you're able to generate. Yeah. So, I would say those two would be really key.
Thank you so much. Moving to next question, it's by Neha. She's asking, for any startup, is it good to be on a social media platform before actually launching their product? Um, it, will it help them in gathering audience and target their market?
Great question, Neha. I think for a startup that's starting, you should figure out, if you want to just learn about, how our audience is likely to likely to respond to your product or to your service, or you just want to listen in, there are opportunities where you don't even have to intervene. You just go to the right communities, the right pages, the right groups, and just try and listen in onto what they're talking about. Is there an unmet need? Is there a fit between your product and the market that you want to get down to? That's one way. This on the other hand, you've obviously got, Kickstarter, for example, is a huge phenomenon, right? I mean, if you're not very sure about what your market size is going to be, you could always, prototype something, go small, go in a very, very tight community, see if people like your product, if you're able to get testimonials from there, if you get able to get, credible advocacy from them, and and really turn that into word of mouth, right? I mean, 3 or 4 years back that seemed theoretical, but now today you've got great examples, great cases of brands which really started small. I don't know again much about brand histories, but if you look at brands like Urban Ladder or Chumbak, they all started really small. They started in a small section. People started seeing some of these products. Even a brand like Ustra, for example, which makes these really cool shaving products. They start on social. They go really narrow. They are hopefully able to build a certain relationship with a small number of people, and then they're able to get that going wider, right? I think it's a really smart way of going about your business.
Thank you very much. Next question is about how do we reach a clear CTA with engagement and influencer marketing?
Yeah, that's the thing, right? I mean, is CTA the only thing in marketing? I don't think it is. Everything's not about acquisition. If your question was about the acquisition metric, uh, obviously the consumer's journey today has become far more complex than being a linear funnel where you have awareness and then you've got conversion. The funnels become extremely non-linear. People could be, moving in a zigzag manner through the different stages of the purchase process and so on. So, just think about it. I mean, any campaign that you do, you may either be doing acquisition directly, or you may be influencing acquisition and nudging that consumer forward to the next step, right? So, yeah, I don't think everything's about acquisition. Having said that, I did share a couple of cases which were about actually influencing acquisition through engagement marketing, and in that sense, it's no different from any other form of digital channels and so on. There is a certain budget you've got, there is a certain cost that you've put, and what we've realized, however, is that if you've got the right engagement marketing model, much like the right advertising, mainline advertising or ATL model, your cost of acquisition can come down dramatically, right? Because you're reaching 200 people, but if you've got an engaging idea that people want to spread and share, they're spending their equity, right? You're not putting in money, you're putting money to reach to 200 people. And even 10% of those 200 people are going to put your word out to another 10 into 200, 2,000 people, right? You've got a potential of reaching far and wide in a direct, so as to say, performance channel, like let's say search or display, or I mean a pay-per-click kind of a channel, or affiliate, or it's linear. You put in X, you get Y. It's a fairly linear relationship. But if you get your engagement marketing right, it doesn't have to be. It's not a variable model. It can be an exponential model.
Thank you. Moving to next question, it's by Vijay. He's asking, can crowdsourcing method be used in real estate? If yes, then how?
I frankly don't know. I don't know how you could use it, but let me just ideate off the fly. Yeah, I mean, you could say, hey, what we want to do as a builder is, while all builders are building their projects and selling. We are building this, crowdsourced community where, all that we're going to have there in the community is all basis input and feedback that's coming in from consumers, for example, right? I mean, imagine a website where you've got nothing but barren land, and people keep saying and adding stuff. It could be an apartment that people work with together and co-create, right? Could say, okay, hey, you know what, this is how it should be like, and someone says, hey, but you know what, you should put this somewhere else, right? Maybe you could do that. I mean, there's obviously, like I said, I don't have a direct answer to what you're saying, but as a consumer myself, I have wondered, when I was house hunting, hey, how cool would it be if, why does everything have to look the same? How great would it have been if this builder or if this construction company had actually had taken input and feedback from the people and built something. I don't know if that helps, but yeah, I mean, you got to think that through.
So Karandeep is asking, are there any unique skills which are required for a team to launch such kind of engagement campaigns?
Hi, Karandeep. I think your agency capabilities has to be big, right? I mean, all of the work that you see here is really about, all about agency relationships, right? And yeah, I mean, if you don't have an agency who's willing to try new stuff, I really believe that you've got to look at people who are powering the agencies, not just the people you meet, but the people who really drive it on a day-to-day basis. Is it young in its mindset? Do they really understand the medium? Are they willing to take risks? Are they willing to, go beyond the brief and try something? Are they willing to experiment? For us, that's been a huge factor. The second, I think, is internally having a good knowledge of basic marketing communication, right? I mean, I don't think any of this would work if you don't have fundamental understanding of your consumer, right? You could just fire something completely different if you don't understand your audience, right? So I think that's important, having a really, really strong killer agency. And second, making sure that you know your audiences really well. What do they like? What do they not like? What would they love? What would they absolutely hate? I mean, the downside, obviously, and we've been very lucky at having run so many campaigns, but not really having anything gone the wrong way, because looking back, we think it was possible because we did understand our audience well.
Thank you so much. Next question is by Simran, who's asking, for a pharmaceutical company that targets only doctors as a customer, what's the scope of engagement marketing and what type of campaigns can be designed?
Hey, hi. That's a great question. I've been not in pharmaceutical, but I sold health foods for a period of time and engaged with medical practitioners, right? And that's a very fine line, isn't it? I mean, you've got to respect ethical practices. You can't toe the line. You can't cross the line in any way. You've got to also do it in a manner that's respectful to the practitioner. Fundamentally, there is a lot of engagement marketing that the pharmaceutical industry anyways does, right? I mean, you're talking about, industry seminars, best practice sharing, case paper presentations. You're doing a lot of it anyways. I think you've got to think about how do you really take it to digital, and what that allows is, like I said, it allows you for reach, it allows you for shareability. But I think you've got to also, in pharmaceutical industry, my guess is you've got to also take care of tonality, right? You can't suddenly become, it's good to be easy, but you can't suddenly become fun and frivolous and cool and wild that a brand like Lenovo can choose to be, right? So I think in your case, it would be critical for you to, I would say two things. One is do whatever is in the gamut of ethical practices. Find out what is really going to make meaningful sense to practitioners, but take care of your brand tonality. You can't, it's good to be friendly and warm, but you can't become, fun. You can't just become frivolous and not be taken seriously. right? So that's something that I'd consider you to, request you to consider.
Thank you so much, Amit. I think we are done with the questions, and I would like to thank you very much for taking out your time and presenting in such a great manner. And every participant really enjoyed the session, and I also did. So thank you so much. We would love to have you in some other session some other day. And thank you everyone for attending the session. Amit, I would like to ask you to share your experience about presenting at Digital Vidya.
Hey, thank you. Thanks, Divya. Thanks, everyone who took their time out and got together with us. Yeah, I think it's what you guys are doing is really cool. I mean, when I always wished when I was growing in my career and I was picking up ropes on digital marketing 7 or 8 years back, there was something like this, but or a forum where people could get together. I had to do my own hacking and hunting. Yeah, but it's great to see that you guys have been able to build a forum which can connect and build a community and connect people like us with more people who are interested and are passionate about digital and digital marketing. Yeah, and yeah, overall, great experience. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Bye bye, everyone. Have a great weekend. I'll see you next week, next Friday, with another webinar. Till then, enjoy your life.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amit.
Cheers.
Bye
Bye.
bye.
Bye. Bye.